So we would like to call Aravind on his place. He is the Director of Marketing for Ruckus Wireless, and he has spent over 15 years in IT industry, more than half in India. Today he is based out of Singapore and covers Asia Pacific region. And his topic would be building the foundation for a smart, secure and connected India for today and tomorrow. Aravind, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, my apologies that Sudarshan was not able to make it here today. He's unwell, so I had like a really quick trip yesterday night. I took a flight at 2:30. I was told on phone, and I'm here like right now in a few hours, right? So very glad to be here, and some great conversation that I've heard from today's discussion. One of the things that I'm seeing today, and we live in a really interesting world today. If you look at, a few weeks back, I spent, some time at one of the big universities in India. And as I was walking through the university, I found something really strange. The level of access to Wi-Fi is tremendously gone up. People were accessing Wi-Fi on the campus, in the dormitory, across the whole, in the library, but across the whole campus. And it was just not through one device. There were like on an average in a dormitory, there was like 5 or 6 devices. There was an internet connected printer, a laptop, a phone, a smart, sometimes a smartwatch, and a gaming device, right? So Nintendo and things like that. And I look back about 10 years back, 12 years back when I studied, it was completely different. If there was internet in the room, it was great. I mean, it wasn't there. And so, there was something that came to my realization, which was we're probably seeing a whole new generation of students, of a generation of people who have been born and brought up in the internet era, right? Who've never seen what it is not to live without the internet, right? And so their needs, their expectations, the way they operate is completely different from how we've operated in the past, right? And so if you look at today, the Wi-Fi, I call it the Wi-Fi addiction, right? Almost 60% of people say they can't live without Wi-Fi. We almost start our day and end our days with Wi-Fi, being able to connect, right? I mean, if there's probably about 15 minutes you've not seen your phone and seen what's there, there's sort of an obsessive compulsive disorder, right? So Wi-Fi has become so critical to people to connect, right? Now, there's an interesting stat, and this is a global stat that came up that I was really surprised with. The amount of smartphone traffic that is going to increase by 8 times by 2020, right? And we're looking at 2.1 exabytes of data, or 17 exabytes of data by 2020 per device, right? That is a huge amount of data that is going to traverse through the network. So this is just the starting point of what's coming next. And if you look at what's coming next, Edgar talked about a little bit of this. We see the world, especially here in India, right? The number of devices that are going to be connected to the internet, right? We're already talking about printers and PCs and laptops and phones and smartphones and watches, but also it extends beyond that. It extends to, automobiles, wearables. So, we're doing a really interesting project in Australia today where, everyone's heard of Bondi Beach, right? Where they're using wearables and Wi-Fi to track the security and safety of kids on the beach, right? So that's the level to which it's going today, right? And then the whole bunch of IoT sensors and machines, right? You know, every now and then I hear this comment that, you know, we have 1 billion people in India and they're going to have 1 billion devices. It's not 1 billion devices. It's actually going to be almost 6 billion, right? If you do the math, if there's going to be, each person carries more than one device, and if there's a whole bunch of IoT sensors and devices, it's a whole lot of devices that need Wi-Fi, right? The challenge today is spectrum is limited, right? And you know, the only way we could do this is Wi-Fi has to complement the spectrum. So, you know, to Arvind's point earlier from TRAI, Wi-Fi is actually an enabling technology to help and is complementary to LTE, right? There's a whole lot of discussions around technology that's happening today. You know, I won't go into that. But then from another point of view, all the information is going into the cloud, right? So, you know, we're trying to access information to the cloud. So there is even more traffic that consumers are trying to connect to the cloud through this network that is flowing, right? And so that puts tremendous pressure on the Wi-Fi infrastructure. So let's just summarize, hang on. What did I say? Everything's going to be connected, but everything's going to be connected even more wirelessly, right? And that means there's a lot of radio signals that are going out. So think about this, right? It's, you know, you're in a big crowd. People are trying to communicate with each other. It's like one radio trying to talk to another radio to communicate. That's how much noise that is there in that environment. So how do you solve this? What can we do from a wireless infrastructure to enable this? Just putting more access points or more Wi-Fi devices does not solve it, right? Because it's going to create more interference among itself, right? So how do you build density and scale that can address this problem is what we can talk about today, right? So we're looking at 1000x increase in data as we go through this whole process. Well, before I get there, I just wanted to share a few things. One is just in terms of what's happening in terms of wireless, in terms of the industry trends, right? So, you know, we talked about the mobile device explosion. One of the things we often forget is, you know, that the device is itself shrinking, right? In the past, we had laptops. Laptops had, you know, powerful antennas that was able to easily communicate. Now we're getting down to watches and sensors, and they have smaller and tinier antennas and power. And so it's going to be harder to communicate with, you know, the Wi-Fi devices. So there is one level of complexity in addressing that, right? The Internet of Things, you know, everyone's talked about it, but how do we securely onboard these devices, right? And how much of this data that we're getting from the Internet of Things do we want it to pass through the entire network to the core of the network? Can the access point become the first layer of intelligent computing, that it actually provides an analysis to that data and provides it back? So that's something that we can look at, right? High-speed refresh, today everyone talks about, you know, the ability of getting the same level of speed on Wi-Fi as on a wireline. So I no longer connect to a, you know, to a physical network cable as with many people. You know, is the network ready to support that? A couple of other interesting technologies, Wi-Fi augmenting LTE, especially in public Wi-Fi areas. Public areas, how can we support that? Cloud, one of the comments that, you know, came out from the earlier panel discussion was, you know, especially when you go into rural areas and, you know, rural schools and things like that, you're not going to find people who have, you know, the knowledge of running a Wi-Fi network, right? How could we simplify this experience for them? How can we make schools self-sufficient by, you know, being able to offer these services over the cloud, right? So to say it simply, if we could enable through the cloud the deployment, provisioning, and application of the Wi-Fi without having them to intervene, it would be really useful, right? And then, you know, Wi-Fi is just the starting point. Can we do more with that? Can we use some intelligence and understand locations and, you know, use those statistics to understand the consumer behavior and monitor that, right? So there's a whole lot of things that we're looking at from a trend perspective, and ultimately it is helping, you know, companies, organizations, businesses, governments solve the whole digital transformation. So it's sort of the foundation for a digital transformation. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Ruckus today and, you know, where we are in this journey and how we've helped shape the landscape. We're learning, and we would love to hear your